Bruce Feldman, Fox Sports college football reporter. He joins us now. What happened in Columbus yesterday, Bruce?
Dan, you had, like you mentioned, four key guys. Joey Bosa is the best defensive player in the Big Ten, and really one of the leaders on the defense, and three essentially wide receivers, including Jalen Marshall, who is their most dynamic player. So, it's an off-field issue. All they basically said was violation of team policy. Ohio State's not going any further than that, and a lot of the sources around there have been kind of tight-lipped. I think a lot of people, when they see a one-game suspension, especially at the start of the year, they kind of go into like one of two categories of what usually is, which isn't like a hugely egregious violation, but at the same time, they're playing on the road at Virginia Tech, who beat them last year in Columbus. And Virginia Tech has a very, very good defense and should be improved from the team that the Buckeyes lost to last year. So an interesting opener got a lot more interesting with this news, and the timing of it was kind of interesting on top of that, because if you went to Ohio State's website at the same time that they released the news that the four players were suspended, it was talking about Joey Bosa being a player to watch, and it was like, if that's the case, maybe you would have taken some of that stuff down off the website if you knew this was going to get out this week, right coming into Big Ten Media Day and Urban Meyer going to the podium.
When does Urban Meyer name his quarterback?
I think he probably will hold off till, like he said, the first guy out the tunnel will be in Blacksburg will be the leader. I think it's eventually going to be J.T. Barrett. I had a chance to see him work out and throw this July, earlier this month. He looked very good. He looked 100% back. I think the thing that, with him, to me, that's a little more differentiator than Cardell Jones is, even though he doesn't have quite as strong an arm, and he doesn't have the physical stature and probably the pro kind of intrigue on the NFL eyes, right now he's a better leader. He's a more consistent guy, and he has a better sense of the offense. And I think if you're Urban Meyer, you go with the more sure thing. And I think leadership is a big component in trying to repeat, especially when you're coming off a deal like this where four key players get suspended for the first game. I mean, it's not like, Urban Meyer dealt with a lot of stuff at Florida, especially at the end of his run there, where the locker room kind of rotted from the inside out. And that's not to jump the gun and say, four players getting suspended means this thing is on shaky legs already. But I think he's going to try to make sure that message gets clear. And I think J.T. Barrett, son of a military guy he's said has basically been his best leader from almost the time he got there as a early enrollee freshman. I think that's the direction they end up going.
How much pressure is Notre Dame under to join a conference? Football-wise?
Not that much. I think that was talking points and sometimes questions that get asked specifically. There was different coaches were going up for that car wash up in Bristol. You know how that deal works. Guys that get asked the same question and they kind of weigh in. I think the reality is with these college football coaches, because it's not the NFL, because it's not uniform kind of structure, that the guys who say, well, they need to play 13 games, they need to have a conference title, that's basically their way to puff up their own chests of their own league. The reality is if Brian Kelly wanted to, he'd say, you know what, nobody should be playing FCS teams or Division II teams. Notre Dame is one of only, I think, 3 schools in all of college football that has never played some lower-level school to fatten up their record. And the first person, I think, who kind of called out Notre Dame on this little junket, as it were, was Gary Pinkel from Missouri. He's a terrific coach, but Gary Pinkel's opener is against an FCS team that wasn't even 500 in FCS last year. So I'm not sure, anybody should be throwing stones at Notre Dame for who they schedule.
How many teams can win the title this year?
One more, say that again?
How many teams can win the national title this year?
I would think probably about 8 or 9. I don't think it's that much more than that. I think the hard piece in this, Dan, is there's not a lot of teams that have really stable or set quarterback situations. I mean, one of the teams I think can win it is Oregon with Vernon Adams, who was a big-time transfer from the 1AA level, had lit up some good some Pac-12 teams when he played them. And he's transferring, but we won't know until about the third day of Oregon's training camp whether he is going to be eligible or not, because he's still completing coursework. With him, I think they're a serious threat to win the national title. Without him, I'm not sure they're a top 10 team.
Good to visit with you, Bruce. We'll be checking in with you throughout the season. Thanks again.
My pleasure. Thank you, Dan.
All right, and that's Bruce Feldman, Fox Sports College Football.